Hi, and welcome to our Blexit, Maryland discussion of Uncle Tom 2. I am Evie, the state director for Blexit, Maryland, along with Kylie here, who's the assistant state director. Hi, Kylie. Can you hear us, Kylie?
Yes, I can.
Great. And tonight we're just going to have a very informal but lively, poignant discussion about the Uncle Tom 2 film, the documentary that was just released maybe 3 weeks ago on the Salem Now Network. It's the second installment from Uncle Tom 1 that was produced by Larry Elders, Brandon Tatum, and some others. It's a very significant film, I think. But Kylie and I are going to discuss some of the themes and some of the points that were in the film tonight. So please stay with us for the next 45 minutes or so. And we hope that you get something out of this podcast, this broadcast here. So, Kylie, starting off, did you want to say anything before we get started?
No.
Okay. All right. So starting off, Kylie, I have to say I loved Uncle Tom 2. I loved Uncle Tom 1. And I thought they were both significant, important films that need to be discussed in the Black community and maybe even about the Black community. What did you think?
I absolutely agree with you with that. I think that Black conservatism is a topic that is misunderstood and underappreciated. And many people are uneducated in what it truly means and how it could benefit the Black
Mhm.
community.
Right, right. There were some important themes in the whole film, even in part one, but definitely in part two. There were some themes that I picked up on, and surprisingly, there were a couple of things in the film that I had to kind of rewind it because I was like, oh my gosh, how come I never knew this, or I was never taught this, or maybe we were never taught this. But I thought they were very poignant in that matter. I'm gonna let's cue up clip number two, at least clip number two, and we're going to start there and kind of go through some of the points of the show, of the film.
Have we been lied to this whole time?
I'm here at 4. Yeah. So I thought the film started with that very important question. Have we been lied to? Have we, as Black people, a Black culture in America, have we been lied to? And if you leave that question by itself, you think like lied to about what? Of course, if you watch the whole film, you will see that it's really talking about, have we been lied to about our beginnings here in America, as well as to where we are current day as a culture, as a people in America. What did you think about that? Did that question kind of spark your mind, Kylie?
Um, yes. I think that we have been sold a narrative that doesn't truly represent what Black culture should mean to us
Mm-hmm.
and where our values lie today and what they did previously throughout history. It's like our culture has done a 180 in the
Mm-hmm.
negative direction. So, have we been sold a lie? I absolutely think that the lie is that our positive culture has been hidden from us. It's been manipulated so that we don't understand the positive attributes that we should stand on today and not just previously in history.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think in some ways we have been lied to in the sense, from a broad perspective, in the sense that our history books may not portray the truth, if you will, about Black people. But on the flip side of that, and this is where I might get into trouble with some people, but I'm going to say what I think. I think we have lied to ourselves, and we feed off of the lies that we have been telling ourselves for a long time. And I think certainly since the civil rights era, the 1960s or so. I think we have been sold a bill of goods, and I think Black people, by and large, have been, just eating up the lies. When I watched Uncle Tom 2, you see this progression again from a little bit of history there in the film, and then you see this progression of how Black people were. If we want to talk about historically from slavery, after slavery, of course, slavery was awful, was horrible. I have to say that. However, after slavery, Black people compared to today and after slavery, it's almost like we are in two different worlds. And you mentioned our values. What are the values you think that we lost or we don't have anymore?
Going in line with what the film said, I think that we've lost our sense of family, our sense of community, our sense of high pride for ourselves and how we carry ourselves, and then being as though we're in a modern age. And I understand that technology has become the main factor in a large part of our progress, but we have to look at how we are represented in the media, and how, how we are misconstrued as a culture that focuses primarily on things of poor value, which is not family. It's more entertainment oriented, thug life, and all of the trappings that come with the entertainment culture that precedes us, instead of what was really important to our growth as a culture, which is a family with, a full family culture, being a part of our church, being a part of our community as a whole, our children, just all those positive attributes that really need to shine through. It's like it's been lost, lost in time. And we've taken a narrative that shows more drugs, more failure, just a life, and it actually became actualized, which is really sad.
Yeah. You mentioned something when I was watching this film as well, not just the words and the documentary itself, but I was captured by a lot of the footage that they showed historically. Again, Black people, you mentioned how we present ourselves. I remember when I was growing up, my grandmother in particular, in her generation, we could not leave the house looking any kind of way, right? We could not leave the house. We couldn't go to the grocery store, let alone the laundromat, because we didn't have washers and dryers at that time. My grandmother didn't, right? On Saturdays, we would get all the clothing together and haul them off to the laundromat. But guess what? Before we left that house to go to the laundromat, you could not wear slippers outside. You would not have hair rollers in your head, and you would not have all of that, right? Let alone going to the doctor's office. You had to basically dress like you were going to church, right?
Yeah.
So how we present ourselves is, or at least it was, an important aspect. And again, some of the pushback that we might get today is, well, everybody can't afford to look like $1 million, and that's fine. And you don't have to look like $1 million every time you leave the house. However, my grandmother used to have a saying, and again, my aunts and my grandmother's generation used to have a saying: use what you have, right? Use what you have and use it, in the best way that you can possibly use it to present yourself, and to not only were you presenting and representing yourself, you were representing your family and your community.
Yes, absolutely. Today's culture, it doesn't put value on taking the extra time to show, the importance of your appearance, places that you go, and how that places the perception on you and your value, and even to society. People treat like what you look like. Just like you said, my mother, she was born in 1950s, and my grandmother in Alabama. We're from Chicago. I could not go outside without, I hate to say it, but ashy feet with a bun on. All of this type of thing that I see is not something that I grew up with. Girls today don't even know what a slip is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's sad that those things that show our pride and show that we care for ourselves and our families and our bodies and what we represent in our families is not of of true importance today. And I think that those values again are lost in time,
Yep.
even
Yep.
though you're not in an age where we wear white gloves to church, or Easter Sunday, we're dressed traditionally in dresses and white shoes and things like that. Even though those times are gone, that doesn't mean that feeling and that representation has to disappear either. And I think those conservative values are exactly what we need today to bring us back to those states of pride and
Mm-hmm.
care for our communities and our neighbors and our friends in such a way that we have love for everything and everyone that we deal with. It's just
Right,
different.
right. Well, let me make a disclaimer here. I have never, even as a child, I hated slips. To this day, I still hate them. But I understand what you're saying because I was, that's how I was raised with that same mentality. But so you would probably never catch me in a slip either. But I understand the meaning and the presentation behind it. That's more important. So another value or another conservative idea, if you will, that was talked about in the film was this idea of not just family, religion was talked about as well, but this idea of the community, religion, how they all cemented, if you will, or help, to insulate the family. But talking about Black people going through slavery and even the civil rights era, when we came out, this economic idea was talked about a little bit, or at least touched on somewhat in the film. This idea of economics, entrepreneurship, helping yourself, and in doing so, you're helping your family and your community because you are able to provide the necessary means to take care of yourself and not rely on the government.
Right.
However, I say today, or at least certainly in recent times in the Black community in particular, I don't know if that's still there. That mindset is still there. Tell me if I'm wrong.
I think that in certain places that you go, that the definition of entrepreneurship changes locally.
Mm-hmm.
And in some places, poverty is different, and they don't have the opportunity to exploit entrepreneurial opportunities. Some places are not caught up. But what I want to say is that those previous historical figures that represented entrepreneurship, they're taught to us, but it's not exemplified in all that we represent as a culture anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Those traditional values of building your business and educating yourself so that you can own your own business. I think that idea is coming back, but those traditional values of family along with that are not with it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like pieces of that history that made us so powerful that they have not shown us those positive images of family, that they have not shown us with those entrepreneurial ways of hard work and education and building a business from a ground up. Those things have been lost.
Right. I have a clip here. I think it's clip number 7. I think it's clip number 7. And I want to do a sort of a contrast, or maybe a compare and contrast of this clip with what at least is caricatured today with Black people. Clip number 7.
Type of propaganda is the brainchild of the communists. And they want to use the Negro to gain foothold in those parts of the world where the darker races exist. I don't give a tinker's damn about a Negro. There are certain people who are using the Negro in order to establish that power in Washington. And the Negro is just merely a pawn in a game that's bigger than he is.
That wasn't the right clip, but we can still talk about this one. Can we try
Black
clip?
People were always
clip number 8. Try number 8 for the next clip. Maybe we can just compare and contrast these two. I think it's the 48-minute mark.
Brainchild of the commies. And they want to use the Negro to gain foothold in those parts of the world where the darker races exist. I don't give a tinker's damn about a Negro. There are certain people who are using the Negro in order to establish their power in Washington. And the Negro is just merely a pawn in a game that's bigger than he is.
Black people were always ripe for use by the communists because many of us do come from situations of poverty.
I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be coming back to see you. And we are going to be demanding when we go to Washington that something be done and done immediately about these conditions.
We can resonate with the theory that there's someone out there that's responsible for our condition.
I am the mother with 6 kids, 6 children. I live on a plantation in an old piece of house. And my husband work on the plantation. He don't make, man, give him just $8 a day. And I don't have a job, and it's hard for him to make a job with $8 a day and nothing else to go up against. I got one son stopped school because I didn't have the money to buy him fish and clothing he needed to wear, and he just dropped out of school. And part of the time, I don't even know where I'm going to get the next meal for my children.
Many Negroes, by the thousands and millions, have been left bootless.
So we can stop it here. So we were talking, Callie, about the entrepreneurship and maybe how it's a different perspective in some places, and they may see it differently. So today, some Black people, again, not all, but some Black people, when I saw that clip with that lady talking about, not able to basically feed her family and her husband not making enough money. And one of the thoughts that went through my mind is this really different today? And if it is not different, then why are we still, and I'm saying we collectively, why are we still in this same position or mindset?
I think that in that particular situation, being in that economic condition, man, it feels like the narrative is still the same, but the education is much different. Like even in the South, the poverty is much different, and people trying to escape those extreme conditions. But even today, as we see people go to areas that have more economic opportunity and education in droves, and I think that for some, they feel like they cannot escape or get past their economic level, and that those situations, and we just have so many different opportunities now, but not everybody knows how to capture those opportunities. And but at least now we do have the vehicles to go to places and go to school and have technology. But then in that situation, what would a woman do? It's just extremely hard and unfortunate that some people back then and today feel like it's hopeless or it's helpless, because you can only get so far without, knowing the right people or having the right opportunity, and you can feel trapped very easily. And all of us in one economic, let's say, class that we are in, or class struggle that we have trying to get to the next level, at some point we all have a ceiling, and breaking barriers to those ceilings, it could feel the same even from decades ago.
That's interesting. So I don't know if I disagree with you fully or agree with you fully, because this is why I'm saying this, because that's interesting, because I I see Black people all from all walks of life, okay? And if it didn't show, I'm Black or a Black woman, okay? And just like you're a Black woman, right? So I see people from all different walks of life, and I hear some of the same things that you're saying from people. But what are these opportunities why is it that we don't know how to partake of the opportunities? You mentioned the education system, and I don't have the answer, and I have the answer, but I don't know, why don't we know how to do these things?
I think that a lot of times we're misguided when we go to school, especially as Black people. A lot of times we come from families that may have not went to college. We have no education on credit and how to use it. We get into some of these majors that have not fully made us aware of job opportunities. A lot of times you could spend 4 years in school, 6 years in school, and you're still applying for jobs that barely pay a living wage, and now with inflation and prices going up, you find people in even harder situations than they did previous to the pandemic. So I think that's where that modern trappedness that people feel, because you go to school all this time, and a lot of times, unless you're in certain fields of work, you may not, or if you have a liberal degree or something of the liberal degree, you may not get a job that would take care of a family.
Right. And it's interesting. Again, I struggle with some of these things, because when I hear people say some of these things, and then I'm looking at some other sides, and I'm thinking something is not right. And I think you're right. And it can go back to not just the family and the community, but it also can be pointed at our education system. Yet we still have a majority of Black people who are in the public school education. And again, I'm not even talking about college, just K through 12. Whereas historically, Black people, when we were educated in one-room schoolhouses, right, we came out with a better educational mind. We came out with skills, and we don't have that nowadays. But we do have what is commonly called the school to prison pipeline, right? Where a lot of our young people will drop out of school for various reasons, and they will find themselves on the streets, in jail, or horribly so, worse off dead. So Booker T. Washington, and we have a clip about this. Booker T. Washington, when he was a slave, and we also know that he was one of the founding of Black culture, if you will, or Black minds, important in our history, in that he instituted Tuskegee Institute. Also, his premise was that when you go to school, Black people, we need to have a skill, a marketable skill. And of course, during Booker T. Washington's day, his students literally built Tuskegee University, Tuskegee Institute, and they came out with marketable skills, which also fed and led to that the era where Black people were doing very well, relatively speaking, after slavery, after Reconstruction. So I want to look at clip number, I think it's number 9, Giovanni. I think it's number 9. But I think education is a huge factor that we're not getting, our people are not getting, particularly in the K through 12 arena.
Yeah, definitely. The rigor is definitely changed.
Own communities. And then you saw this large exodus of Black people out of those skilled trades.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many of them left work?
Because they fell for the lie of the so-called Black leadership.
In the slave South, Negroes impoverished and mistreated have sought remedy by pouring into the cities.
W.B. Du Bois is a towering figure in Black intellectual history. And oftentimes people will pit Booker T. Washington and W.B. Du Bois against one another. Up from slavery, Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, the souls of Black folk. Booker T. Washington, Tuskegee Institute. W.B. Du Bois, the NAACP.
The NAACP collects billions of dollars to racial incitement. They go out of their way to create race issues, because the more race issues they create, the more they've got an appeal for begging for funds. But what do they do with that money? They do not spend one single cent to build any factories or shops to create jobs or to contribute to the development of free enterprise in our country. They're not interested in that.
They wanted to be the head of black people.
Yeah. So I thought those clips were interesting in that still, even today, we are living in the legacy of Booker T and or the W.E.B. Du Bois movement, if you will, with the tracks of the NAACP or the education. And I think a lot of Black people, I don't think they think about it in that aspect. I think at least I'm saying a lot. Again, when I say a lot, I'm not talking about every Black person. I'm just using those pronouns, right? When I say a lot of Black people, some of them still are reliant on this government idea of education. Government gives me the jobs or gives me whatever the money, whatever the benefits are, versus the Booker T school is to go out there and make it yourself. Booker T, as a slave, a former slave, he did not mince and he did not minimize the effect of slavery at that time on Black people. But he also advocated that Black people, we become skilled and educated and know how to go out into the marketplace, into the system, into America, and make lives for ourselves and our families. Am I wrong, or is there anything that I'm missing?
I think that the ideal is accurate. I think that there was something powerful that was said between them both, is that when he built Tuskegee, he built something that stayed for generations. Is still there. What he built by hand is something that it brought more value, because look at the many of thousands of people that have been positively affected by his train of thought, as opposed to the other ideal where it was anti-America or pan-African, back to Africa, this type of ideal that really didn't stand the test of time. I think the only issue is because we don't know our history, and we don't even know about more conservative values, that we can't equate that vision to today, and we can't kind of transcend those positive values today, even if it was a long time ago. Just taking that pride in our history is a solid foundation for how we can move and build our families and stand in a sense of honor and goodness and morale. And those values that would stand the test of time and build a better foundation within our culture today. And it's something that is mostly absent, especially the state of the Black church that is in today.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, Kylie, because this is what I think about sometimes. We're talking about the conservative values, really, right? Not necessarily a political conservatism, but the values that preserve our families, right? To preserve our communities. Why do they get such a bad rap? Even in Uncle Tom 2, there was some clips and there were some parts talking about the Black Lives Matter movement with and the organization with Patrisse Cullors and I forget the other ladies' names. But this idea that conservative values are bad, or they represent the white man or the white culture, but that's not true. But yet it's not true. But yet we have a lot of people that I know, I'm sure people that you know, that will kind of spew this stuff and say, "Oh, that's the white man." I can't square it.
I think that that information is manipulated to work in their favor. And instead of focusing on the true sense of what conservatism means for our family structures, it's taken out of context and it's used in such a way that's derogatory. And it's very I mean, honestly, to me, it's a power grab that it's unfortunate that they want to focus on the very things that it's destructive. I mean, it just is. Instead of bringing those things to light, it would demean their sense of their message if the focus was what conservatism really means.
Right. Let's look at another clip. Did you? But let me before we go to the clip, was there any part of the movie, Kylie, that kind of stuck out to you or made an impact on you?
I think that in terms of Marxism and communism, I think that we never really equated what those economic forces really mean in our culture. We hear about it now, but on the liberal side of it, they don't see or define themselves in that way. So for them to acknowledge that these are some of the things that are holding us back economically, and that we're fighting and pitting each other against each other, I think that is what stuck out the most to me, and how we could educate myself more on what that means, and be able to talk with others and inspire others to learn for themselves, so that no one else within our communities who care to listen have to they don't necessarily know that those are destructive patterns and destructive ways of thinking.
Yeah, I think you're right. But this is the part that frustrates me, right? Because I understand that people may not know something, and I'm a former instructor, educator, so I can understand where there is, I'm going to say ignorance, but I'm not using it in a negative or pejorative. Okay, where there's genuine ignorance, some things we just don't know. I get that. But then on the other hand, I struggle with, there's so much information. There's so many avenues to get the information. And I'm thinking, if you really wanted to learn something, it's there. I mean, like, the world is at your feet. Why are you not partaking of the avenues to broaden your mind, to teach yourself, to learn, so that we can learn to do better? This is the struggle that I find myself ugh.
I think that people aren't really educated academically, and people really don't know how to research. How many people know how to read a medical study, or how many people know how to read law text or find the law, or even those things that make you a well-researched person? Most people are not trained to think that way. So why would they even bother themselves to research that deeply when they don't know what they don't know? And we find now, even with social media, that everything is broadly generalized into a quote or a meme. And we're attaching these false meanings to things that people don't even have an awareness to research, because they've never academically been taught how to study.
Right.
So, but for someone who's been educated on a master's level or an undergraduate level, doctorate level, of course, it makes perfect sense that we study, for instance, COVID vaccines, or, certain things that could affect our health. It would behoove you to do that. And I think that a lot of people, it just doesn't register.
Okay, but this is okay. So my struggles maybe is a little bit deeper than this. What I struggle with sometimes is many people don't seem to even have the desire. I mean, I wasn't coming out the womb going to school, right? But I mean, I'm a reader. I've always loved to read, and if I got extra money, I'm probably buying a book. But so that desire doesn't seem to be there amongst a lot of people nowadays. And so how do we, like you and I, we are the directors of Blexit, Maryland. How can we generate that desire, or is it even possible to do it?
I mean, not everybody is in the business to learn or to be educated, and it may not be their personal brand, even for self-improvement. And I think that our culture today, it's situated that we go to school, we get a job, we make families, we come home, we watch TV, we start binge watching, and education is not always the first priority as it was 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
And that's a lot of the problem that, and it's across cultures. It's not even just our culture, that we get into this mindset of, what do I want to say?
We get complacent.
Complacent. Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And we forget that, constantly educating yourself, whether it be to get a certification, whether it be to get a degree, whatever it is to improve yourself, should be a person's number one priority. And
right.
A lot of people, it's not. It's not.
Right.
Some people just are surviving day to day.
Right. So a question came up about the film, the Uncle Tom film, because if we wanted to make an impact, but we're talking about economics, we're talking about history, we're talking about education. And again, I think this film is powerful, but this is the challenge. If we are trying to reach communities, Black people in general, but specific communities that need this information, how will they be able to get it if it's behind a paywall? Because you have to pay for Uncle Tom. You have to pay for it.
Eventually it'll probably be free, but right. I think that conservatism, I think that its meaning and its virtues need to be expounded on in every platform and way possible across social media. I think that it's been stained and its meaning has been manipulated, and it's our jobs to break through, as they are trying in the film, and both Uncle Tom 1 and 2, to dispel those stereotypes about Black conservatives and what their brand stands for.
Right.
And, focus more on the positive and getting those things out, because that's really what's going to, at the end of the day, change our culture.
Right.
It just is.
Well, we are winding down, but before we do, I do want to mention, and I'll let you mention too, I want to mention a few words about Blexit. That, again, we are the directors of Blexit Maryland. And Blexit is a national foundation, a national organization focused on reaching minorities, particularly African Americans, Black Americans, in the urban areas. But where they are, we want to talk to them we want to reach them with ideas of school choice, accurate history and education, right? Entrepreneurship, talking about other avenues where we can help our people, help Black people not to be government dependent. So again, I'm Evie, the state director, and this is Kylie. She's the assistant state director for Blexit Maryland. So you can go to the Blexit.org website, and you can become a member of Maryland, our Maryland chapter, because we need your help and we want to engage with you. We want to team up with you and work with you across Maryland, getting information out to our communities that will uplift our people, Black people, and at the same time, preserve the values that work the best for us. Kyla, you have anything to say before we go to our last clip?
No, well said. Thank you.
Kylie does talk more than this, ladies and gentlemen. But so let's so as we close out, I think it was clip number 10. Clip number 10 is it's talking about basically giving us an idea for where we can go from here a little bit. And this is not a long clip, but we can again maybe share some ideas as we close out.
And noble sounding as a civil rights movement could possibly be a communist maneuver.
We have to begin to ask the hard questions. Are there things culturally, are there things generationally that we've been doing, that we've been thinking, that we've been believing that are contributing to these problems? Are there things in some of those victories that we won that maybe flip things in a different direction than we thought? Did we begin to depend on the government at the expense of the strength of depending on our families and our fathers and our men?
This administration today, here and now, declares unconditional war on poverty in America.
Wow. I think that was Pastor Vody Bachman who was speaking at that, who was narrating that portion. I think he summed it up pretty well. We need to start asking ourselves the hard questions. Are there things that we have kind of gotten rid of that we need to bring back? That again, that sustained and preserved our communities, our families. Men, we need our men back where they belong, on the forefront, protecting, providing, guiding, leading our families, our children, our communities. If our children don't see these things and these people in places, what do they have to look up to? What do they have? What impetus or what incentives do they have to want to take over the next mantle? Did you want to say anything, Kylie?
Yes, I think that that brand of values needs to stand in the forefront and not always be downplayed, and other values that don't represent us very well are in the forefront, unfortunately, and that we're not just a culture of entertainment and thuggism and materialism and wasted economic opportunity, but we are just more than what the media and what some political ideologies want to prevail and say about us as a people.
Right. I agree. So before we're going to close, we're done talking. Unless you have any other final points, Kylie, I'm going to close us out.
Mm-hmm.
So we are Blexit, Maryland. I'm Evie and this is Kylie. We are the directors for Blexit, Maryland, and we need your help. And this presentation was also brought to you in partnership with Metro Conservative Media. So you can go to blexitfoundation.org as well as metroconservativemedia.com to support both of us. We need members in Blexit. We need your help here in Maryland. And I'm sure MCM can use your help and to support their organization as well. So I thank you for listening. Kylie, I hope this was fun, not too disconcerting, I guess, right? I enjoyed it. I like talking on podcasts, so.
No, it was great. Thank you.
Good, thanks. So until next time, you will be seeing more of myself and Kylie coming up. But until next time, thank you for joining us, and we hope this was of value to you as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.